Hello and welcome to Chapter 9. Today we're going to talk about motivation, and I think this is one of the most fascinating topics in the course because I like psychology a lot, and a lot of this has to do with psychology, but it also is very important in the workplace as motivation is a large part of a manager's job. If you as a manager can find ways to motivate your employees, you'll be a very successful manager. After all, as we know, management is getting things done through others. So what is motivation? Motivation is an inner drive that directs a person's behavior toward goals. And that involves um, initiation of effort. And what that means is that is concerned with the choices that people make, about how much effort they're going to put into their job. They also have direction of effort, and direction is deciding where they're going to put forth the effort. And then persistence of effort means how long they will put forth the effort and keep doing so. So motivation, when it comes down to it, is mainly concerned with employees fulfilling their wants and needs. The trick is to make those the same as the organization's wants, needs, and goals. So why is motivation important? Okay, for many, many reasons, but um, as a manager, you want to motivate people. You have to motivate them first to join your organization. Why do they want to come and work there? You have to motivate them to stay with your organization once they're there. You have to motivate them to show up every day. Okay, you have to motivate them to be engaged while they're at your organization. You have to motivate them to go above and beyond and do extra things. And we call this organizational citizenship. And what this means is employees are motivated to go above and beyond kind of their job description and do things for the good of the organization. Okay, so where's all this motivation stuff come from? Okay, if we go way back to the beginning of management, which management's a fairly new science, it's been around for about 125 years. We go back to the day when the theory started, mainly during the Industrial Revolution, when factories and assembly lines were attracting thousands of workers, and managers had to deal with this. Okay, so Frederick Taylor is known as the father of scientific management, and he was the first one to kind of come in and look at this. So he's the one that came up with specialization, breaking jobs down into their task. But his main thing was to determine the best way, the one best way workers could perform a task. And also, he advocated for paying workers a fair wage. In fact, he always advocated a fair day's wage for a fair day's work, was what he was all about. At the same time, there were some other researchers, Frank and Lillian Gilbreth, who you may have heard of. They're the author of the famous book Cheaper by the Dozen that became a couple different movies. And what they did was use their large family as a method to develop efficiency theories that could be applied in manufacturing. And they were mainly concerned with motion studies, or how you could take a job and break it down into each task and get rid of things that weren't necessary or things that were repetitive to make jobs more efficient and easier for people. So these classical theories, these early theories, were all about motivating people with compensation. And the book talks about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation and rewards. And intrinsic means you get satisfaction from the job itself, versus extrinsic means that you're motivated by things like compensation and benefits and those sorts of things. So the classical theories definitely played to the extrinsic means of motivation. And at that time, piece rate systems were developed. So piece rate systems are based upon how much a person produces. So the more a person produces, the more that they would be paid. Okay, so they thought that would be an incentive. So the next movement after these efficiency movements was called the human relations movement. And the focus kind of went on to people. They discovered people were a valuable resource to the organization, and their needs are important, and relationships are important. Okay, so that started the human relations movement. And a big proponent of that was Elton Mayo, who is famous for conducting the Hawthorne studies. And what Elton Mayo did, he went, this was like 1924 to 1932, at a Western Electric plant in Chicago, and he investigated the effects of lighting levels and incentives on the productivity of groups. Okay, so what he did, he went into this factory and he did various things. He changed the lighting and measured productivity. He put in music and measured productivity. And what he found was no matter what he did, productivity went up. Even if he decreased lighting or even with compensation, increased compensation, decreased compensation, productivity went up. And what they did, and they called this the Hawthorne effect. And what they discovered was that because management was paying a lot of attention to these employees, that they developed a sense of participation in their work situation. And more than that, they became a social unit. They became a group. And with that, they established norms for their group and were more motivated to perform well. Okay, so it's a very classical study, and even today, researchers um, study that. So it's kind of an interesting study. So going on with theories of motivation, okay, past the classical theories, as part of the human relations movement, Abraham Maslow came up with this theory in 1943. And if you ever took psychology, you've heard this, you're going to hear it in probably every business class for sure you take. But what this does, it shows that workers have needs other than just earning a paycheck. And management has to meet these needs in order for workers to be more motivated. So it deals with 5 levels. So the bottom level is the physiological. So this has to be satisfied before someone's going to be motivated. And this is the need for food, clothing, shelter, self-preservation. Once that's met, the employee moves to safety, the need for physical safety and emotional security. After that, the employee moves to the social. This is love, friendship, affection, and after that to esteem, which is self-respect, status, reputation, recognition, that sort of thing. And then after that, finally, you reach self-actualization. And at this level, it involves self-fulfillment and becoming the best that one is capable of being. So managers have to meet these lower level needs in order for someone to move up, to esteem and self-actualization, where real motivation is going to occur. Okay, and employees can move up the pyramid and suddenly find themselves on the bottom. For instance, during Hurricane Katrina, I know people lost their houses and their clothes and everything, so they kind of went from the top down to the bottom very quickly and had to move their way back up. And managers had to deal with that. They couldn't expect someone to come in their job and be super motivated to perform when they were worried they didn't have a place to sleep that night. Okay. The next theory is McGregor X and Y. I kind of equate this to the carrot and stick theory we talked about the first day of class. So a theory X manager is somebody that thinks workers are irresponsible and they don't want to work, and therefore they have to tell them what to do and be very authoritarian. Theory Y managers recognize that workers are capable of working and they want to do a good job. So Theory Y managers are the more democratic type leaders we had talked about and involve their employees in various decisions and things like that. Hertzberg's two-factor theory has been very controversial, and the reason why is it says that compensation is not a motivator, okay? And we could argue that all day, I'm sure. But what this theory says is that there are certain hygiene factors that have to be in place in order for motivation to occur. So a hygiene factor doesn't motivate somebody, but if it's not there, it makes somebody dissatisfied and they're not going to be motivated, but it doesn't motivate somebody. Okay, so job satisfaction is related to achievement and recognition, and job dissatisfaction is associated with, pay and policies, working conditions. So hygiene factors are kind of lower order needs and won't motivate. So for example, let's say we have this manufacturing facility and the air conditioning goes out and it's the middle of summer. Okay, this will cause employees to be dissatisfied, right? That's a hygiene factor. So installing new air conditioning will remove the cause of the job dissatisfaction, okay? But it won't spur motivation. It won't make workers greatly satisfied and want to produce like crazy. Okay, those motivation factors are the ones that will do that. But you have to remove the dissatisfaction in order to motivate and get satisfaction. Okay, equity theory. This is a theory by J. Stacy Adams, and this theory is all about fairness and perception of fairness. It says that we as employees compare ourselves with other people in the workplace, and we do this little calculation to determine if we're putting in more than we're getting out as opposed to other people. So what I bring to the job, things like my hard work and my education and that sort of thing, things I get out, outcomes would be pay, benefits, that sort of thing. Okay, so if we perceive that to not be equal, if I'm putting in more than I'm getting out as compared to my coworkers, I'm going to be dissatisfied. Okay, and employees are motivated to resolve these feelings of injustice. So what happens is employees may leave the company, they may work, kind of slow down their work. So they'll try to get around that, okay, to resolve these bad feelings. Expectancy theory is a theory by Vroom, and this theory says that people are motivated by two things. They're motivated by how much they want something and by how likely they think they are to get it. So in other words, they're assuming people have choices, people will make the choice that promises them the greatest reward if they think that they can get it. Okay. So how do we motivate employees? Okay, one theory involves behavior modification, and this is based upon the fact that behavior with positive consequences tends to be repeated, whereas behavior with negative consequences tends not to be repeated. Okay, so 4 methods of doing this reinforcement. So we have positive reinforcement, where we give desirable consequences to strengthen behavior, like giving somebody a bonus because they exceeded a sales goal. Negative reinforcement is withholding an unpleasant consequence that strengthens behavior. So in other words, in the same thing, what if we had a manager that would nag an employee continuously about not meeting the sales goal? So the employee says, well, I'm going to meet the sales goal because I don't want this guy nagging me all the time. Okay, that's negative reinforcement because they're wanting to avoid this unpleasant situation of the nagging. Punishment weakens behavior. In punishment, for instance, we're going to say we're going to terminate somebody if they don't meet the goal. Okay, and extinction is where we want to decrease the frequency of the undesirable behavior. Okay, other strategies. Oh gosh. Okay, other strategies. Job enlargement. Okay, job enlargement is a strategy. Let's start with job rotation. Okay, sorry about that. I got confused. My screen changed. Okay, job rotation. That's where we move employees from one job to another to relieve the boredom with job specialization. So in the fast food restaurant scenario, we would move somebody from making the French fries to doing the drinks. Okay, and that um, creates some um, diversity in what they're doing, but eventually it becomes boring as well. With job enlargement, we expand the worker's assignments to include additional but similar tasks. So we could say, well, you go ahead and take the customer's order, and then go ahead and bag up the fries, go ahead and get the drink, take the money. So we're just adding more to it to make it more interesting. And sometimes workers feel that they're just doing a whole lot of boring jobs, but it gives some variety. In job enrichment, which is the method to really motivate people, this is where we add more variety and responsibility in jobs. We design jobs in a way to build in motivation. Okay, so we do that by using skill variety, task identity, significant tasks, and these things make a person feel the job is important and they're making a difference, which is very motivating, okay, to somebody. Then we can also build in autonomy and give feedback. Other ways to design jobs involve work schedules. We can allow people flex time. We can allow them to work part-time. Job sharing, compressed work week, telecommuting. All these things kind of take in a work-life balance perspective, and allows employees more flexibility to take care of their, home life and their work life. Therefore, they'll be more motivated while they're working because they're not worried about all the stuff at home. Okay, those were the high points from Chapter 9. I hope you found it interesting too. We could talk for an entire semester just about this topic. It's so interesting. So thank you.